I am Y.B. Taylor, and poetry is my tell. Still marching from In My Shoes, poems of introspection. We've been marching for 150 years and haven't moved an inch. My African ancestors marched with pride. They marched to and through fields, their fields. They marched to grow and cultivate crops, their crops. They marched heads high, regal. They marched. My African ancestors marched, captured, traded under false pretenses, shackled men, women, children. They marched. Families dismantled, cultures disrupted, to slave ships awaiting human cargo. They marched. My African ancestors marched in lands foreign to them. From plantation to plantation, they marched, sold, gifted, traded like cattle. Families further dismantled, cultures further disrupted, enslaved, propertied. They marched no longer to their fields to grow and cultivate their crops, but marching in fear of loss of life, marching in fear of maiming for life, marching in fear of life. My African heritage ancestors marched in protest of inequality. They marched in protest of denial of civil rights. They marched. In protest of lynching, they marched. In protest of substandard housing, they marched. For denial of job opportunities, they marched. My African heritage ancestors marched, and I, an African heritage woman, and others like me, march, no longer shackled as slaves, but shackled by color of skin, shackled by ignorance of others, shackled by denials of our prominence, shackled by denials of our contributions, denials of our abilities, denials of our validity, denials of our certified, undeniable existence. My African ancestors marched. My African heritage ancestors marched. Today's African heritage people march, but no longer march alone. Enlightened by discoveries and disclosures, secreted for years, African heritage people now march in force with brothers and sisters of varying hues, varying ethnicities, varying cultures, varying experiences, varying backgrounds. Non-African heritage brothers and sisters march, acknowledging injustices visited upon our African ancestors, acknowledging injustices visited upon our African heritage ancestors, acknowledging injustices visited upon today's African heritage people. We marched, we are marching, all will march because there, but for the grace of God. reaching and teaching through poetry. Thank you.